أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. In the previous discussion, we were discussing the ways of bypassing interest while engaging in bank transaction. And we explained that we have three types of banks. We have private owned bank, we have joint ventures bank, and we have government or state owned bank. And we were focusing on private owned bank, which is still our focus till now. We are discussing private owned bank, and we discussed that in the previous discussion that when you go to the bank to collect a loan from the bank, and the bank agrees to give you the loan, the bank will give you a condition that when they lend you this money, you'll be returning back the money with additional amount of money. For example, you need 5 million naira loan from the bank, and the bank agrees to give you the money with a condition that when you are returning back the money, you will be returning the money with additional 300,000 naira, for example. And we said this additional 300,000 naira is considered an interest and it is forbidden, it is haram. Also, sometimes you go to the bank to deposit an amount of money, even though it is called deposit, a deposit. However, when we critically analyze it, we discover that it is not a deposit. But you go to the bank to deposit an amount of money. And then when it is time for you to collect back your money, you discover that there is additional amount of money added to that money, the actual amount you deposited to the bank. And that is because the bank uses the money in a business and then shares the gain from that business with you by giving you a percentage from that gain. This percentage will be added to your money, and then you discover an increment in the actual amount of money you deposited to the bank. And we said this increment on the actual amount of money you deposited to the bank is considered an interest, and it is haram, it is forbidden. And interest is not only forbidden upon the receiver, it is forbidden upon the receiver, upon the giver, even the person that documents it and the person that bears witness in that transaction. So, are there ways of bypassing interest when collecting loans from the bank? We said yes. And we mentioned the number one way of bypassing an interest when collecting loan from the bank. And this is called al-bay' bitaxid. And we explained this in the previous discussion. So inshallah tonight we will be discussing the other way of bypassing interest when collecting loan from the bank. And the second way of of bypassing interest when collecting loan from the bank is called al-mudaraba or al-musharakat. What is al-mudaraba? Al-mudaraba is when you go to the bank to collect a loan of amount of money. For example, you have a business, you are a businessman, and you need a particular amount of money to invest in your business. However, you do not have this money. Then you go to the bank and then discuss with the management of the bank, a private owned bank, and then discuss with the management of the bank that I want you to partner with me in this business by providing the capital for the business. And this is called partnership loan. It is called participation loan, or it is also called profit sharing loan. So you go to the bank, request the bank to partner with you in the business by providing the capital for that business, and the bank would agree. If the bank agrees, then you would have an agreement with the bank that the gain from that business will be shared accordingly between yourself and the bank by giving a percentage from that gain to the bank, and also you take percentage for yourself. By doing this, you've not engaged in an interest transaction, because there's no interest here. Because when the bank gives the capital and when the business is concluded, the exact capital invested in that business will be returned back to the bank, and the gain will now be shared between yourself and the bank accordingly. So by doing this, the bank would gain, you gain, and then you collect loan from the bank and return back the loan to the bank without adding an interest to that loan. This is the second way of bypassing an interest when collecting loan from the bank, and it is called al-mudaraba. The third way of bypassing an interest when collecting loan from the bank is called al-hibatu al-mashruta. Though this is not that common as these two second ways, the two first ways that I explained, which is al-bay bi-taqsit wal-mudaraba. This al-hibatu al-mashruta is, this is how it is. You need an amount of money. For example, you need 10 million naira, and you go to the bank to give you the money, and the bank gives you a condition that they will need additional 300,000 naira. And you, being a believer, knowing the dear consequences of engaging in an interest, you wouldn't want to give interest to the bank. Then how do you bypass this? You tell the bank that you need 300,000 naira, right? I'm gifting you 300,000 naira with an agreement that you will be loaning 10 million naira to me without adding any interest to it. If the bank agrees, then you gift that 300,000 naira to the bank. And because this gift, there is a condition stipulated in this gift, which is that the bank will loan you 10 million naira. When you give the 300,000 naira to the bank, then the bank will loan you that 10 million naira. And when the bank loans you when the bank lends you the 10 million naira, they wouldn't request any interest from you. When it is time to return back the money, you return the exact amount of money that the bank lent to you, which is 10 million naira. By doing this, the bank would benefit, you benefit, and you also collect your loan without engaging and involving in an interest. So these are the three ways of bypassing interest when collecting loans from the bank. And we must understand, we are still discussing private owned bank. And this is about collecting loan. How about depositing money to the bank? Because you deposit money to the bank, and then the bank uses the money in a business and then decides to share the gain from that business with you by giving you a percentage from the gain. And this would would add an increment to the amount of money you deposited to the bank. This increment is considered an interest. It is considered riba, and it is haram. It is forbidden. However, if you did not have any prior agreement with the bank, you did not request from the bank, you did not fill any form in the bank requesting them to use your money in a business and then give you a percentage from the gain of that business and add it to the amount of money you deposit to the bank, then this additional amount of money, even though if the bank decides on its own to add the money to use your money for in a business and then add the money to add the gain, the percentage from the gain of that business to your money, this was not considered an interest, and it is not haram, it is not forbidden. You can use the money. However, if you have prior agreement with the bank and you signed, you filled a form and you signed in that form, or you request from the bank that I want to deposit this particular amount of money in your bank, and I'm giving you the permission to use the money in a business with a condition that you share the gain from that business with me by giving me this percentage from the business. So if you had this agreement with the bank before depositing the money, then that additional amount of money that the bank would add upon the money you deposited to the bank is considered an interest, and it is forbidden, it is haram. So these are the common ways of bypassing interest when collecting money or collecting loan from the bank. And also this is about the issue of interest when depositing money to the bank. And mind you, we are still discussing interest in private owned bank. And inshallah, we are going to discuss the remaining issues concerning this main topic in the subsequent discussion. Sorry. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.